Mansa Musa was famous for his piety, which is devotion to his religion, and generosity. His 25-year reign from 1312 to 1337 is thought of as the golden age of the Mali Empire. The Islamic scholar Ibn Kathir reported that Mansa Musa was a young, handsome man who had 24 lesser kings under his authority. Al-Umaru was told that Mansa Musa had conquered 24 cities, each with its surrounding districts with villages and estates, and that his palace was rich and splendid. Subscribe on Tarihi channel for more interesting and educative videos on African history. The royal flag that flew over Mansa Musa when he rode out on horseback was yellow with a red background. When the Mansa officially met with people, he carried golden weapons, including a bow and arrow. Golden weapons are seen as symbols of royal power in Mali. Mansa Musa sat on a large ebony throne that was on a raised platform with elephant tusks along the sides. Behind the king stood about 30 slaves, including slaves from Turkey and Egypt. Over the Mansa's head, one of the slaves held a large silk sunshade topped by a golden falcon. The lesser kings sat in 2 rows on both sides, and beyond them were the commanders of the cavalry. In front of the Mansa stood the sword bearer or chief executioner and a chief spokesman called a Jelai. The Mansa never spoke aloud in public, but whispered what he wanted to say to the Jelai, who would make the announcement. Music accompanied his public appearances. There were different sized drums, trumpets made of elephant tusks, and a kind of xylophone called the bala that is famous for its beautiful sound. There were always 2 horses, far more expensive than camels, tied nearby, ready for the Mansa to ride whenever he needed them. Of all the sub-Saharan West African rulers who made the pilgrimage or Hajj to Mecca, Mansa Musa was the most famous. When he was preparing for the journey, he consulted his diviners to find out the best time to leave. The diviners told Mansa Musa he should wait until a Saturday that will fall on the 12th day of the month. This meant that he had to wait 9 months before he could leave, which he did. The journey across the Sahara Desert took about a year and was extremely difficult. Thousands of people are said to have accompanied Mansa Musa. The king took along his senior wife Inari Kanute, who had hundreds of her own servants and slaves. There were also Muslims from among the Mali court officials and merchants community, soldiers to protect the caravan, camel drivers, servants, and slaves. There were thousands of camels and donkeys to carry food, water, and other supplies. The caravan is said to have included 80 loads of golden dust. In addition to the animals, there were slaves to help carry the loads. When the caravan arrived in Egypt, the slaves were sold. Later, others were purchased for the return journey. When Mansa Musa arrived in Egypt in July 1324, his huge caravan camped outside Cairo near the Great Pyramids. His visit to Egypt created a sensation because he carried such a huge amount of gold with him and was extremely generous in his gift giving. Among the gifts he sent to the Sultan of Egypt were 40,000 dinars or golden coins. He also gave 100,000 dinars to the Sultan's deputy and was similarly generous to everyone at the Egyptian court. When the visitors from Mali shopped in the Cairo market, the merchant took advantage of them and charged them 5 dinars for things that were sold for 1 dinar. Mansa Musa distributed so much gold as gifts, and the Malians spent such large amounts in the market that gold declined in value and did not recover for several years. Mansa Musa stayed at Cairo for 3 months before he continued on to the Arabian Peninsula and the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. Such a journey would be extremely dangerous, and remember, Sakura was killed on his way home on such a journey. This was true even for an emperor as rich and powerful as Mansa Musa, who had a large armed guards and thousands of people with him. Entire caravans have been known to lose their way and die in the great sandstorms of the Sahara. Some wells were several days' journey apart. In a dry year, there might not be enough water for even a small caravan. Desperate travelers will sometimes kill their camels and drink the liquid out of their humps. On Mansa Musa's journey, he and his caravan suffered great hardships across the Sahara. They narrowly escaped disaster returning to Cairo from Mecca. Sub-Saharan pilgrims were unfamiliar with the routes from Egypt to Arabia, so the usual practice was for them to join an Arabian caravan caravan in Cairo and accompany it to Mecca. According to Ibn Khaldun, when Mansa Musa and his entourage were returning from Mecca to Cairo, they got separated from the main caravan. Without any Arabian companions to show them the way, they were completely lost and could not find water. They wandered until they finally came to the seashore at Suez, where the Suez Canal would be built more than 5 centuries later. They ate whatever fish they could find, and anyone who strayed from their main group was kidnapped by local Bedouin people, nomads who wandered the Arabian Peninsula, and taken as a slave. The survivors were finally rescued, but according to Muhammad al-Hussein al-Makarizi, an Egyptian historian and geographer, as many as a third of Mansa Musa's people and camels died. By the time Mansa Musa was ready to return to Mali, he had used up all his gold. To pay for his journey home, he had to borrow money at a very high interest rate. Like any traveler to foreign lands, Mansa Musa saw things he wanted to take home with him. In his case, there were also some people he wanted to take home. When he was in Mecca, he offered 1,000 misqals to any shurafa or direct descendants of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who would go back to Mali with him. 4 of them eventually agreed to go. They accompanied him with his families and settled permanently in Mali. Mansa Musa also returned with an Arab architect, a person who designed buildings from Spain named Abu Ishaq al-Sahili. The architect built Mansa Musa a rectangular house with a dome on top. The house was covered with plaster that was decorated with beautiful designs. This marked the introduction of an architectural style that can still be seen in many towns and cities of the Western Sudan. One of Mansa Musa's residences was in Timbuktu, and As-Sahili settled there. He is thought to have built the Great Mosque in Timbuktu on the orders of Mansa Musa. Under Mansa Musa's reign, commerce flourished in the Mali Empire. All the same goods that were traded in the regional market of the Ghana Empire from the 10th to the 12th centuries were still traded in the markets of Mali from the 13th to the 15th centuries. The main difference was that at the height of Mali's power, it controlled far more territory than Ghana ever did, so it had more to sell. By the beginning of the 14th century, Mali's expansion into the inland delta, Gao, and the eastern Songhai provinces added enormously to the farming, grazing, hunting, and fishing resources of the empire. The new territories also provided additional sources of slave for trade, military service, and farm production. Tributes, a payment that a lesser ruler sends to a greater ruler from the kings and chiefs in Mali territory, and taxes from newly controlled trade routes enriched the government's treasury. From the mid-14th century, when Mali was at its height of power and imperial dominance, the trans-Saharan trade had greatly increased. Because of Mansa Musa's fabulous pilgrimage and the resulting publicity in Cairo, Mali became better known in North Africa and the Middle East, and even in Europe. Stories of Mali's wealth drew increasing numbers of North Africans to trade deals across the Sahara. In the decades following Mansa Musa's pilgrimage, Egyptian traders were regular visitors to Mali. The people who lived in Mali's commercial centers, such as Walata, were dressing in clothes imported from Egypt. Mansa Musa sent diplomats and opened an embassy in Morocco, which stimulated trade with the Maghreb. During his long return journey from Mecca in 1325, Mansa Musa heard news that his army, led by one of his generals, Sagmendia, captured Gao. The city of Gao had been within the empire since before Sakura's reign and was an important, though often rebellious, trading center. Mansa Musa made a detour and visited the city, where he received as hostages the 2 sons of the Gao king, Ali Kolun and Suleiman Nar. He returned to Nian with the 2 boys and later educated them at his court. Mansa Musa embarked on a large building program, raising masjids or mosques and madrasas or schools in Timbuktu and Gao and other cities, most notably the ancient center of learning of Sakura Madrasa or University of Sakura was constructed during his reign. During this period, there was an advanced level of urban living in the major centers of Mali. With his development of the city of Timbuktu and introducing scholars from the Arab world to the city, Timbuktu soon became the center of trade, culture, and Islam. Markets brought in merchants from Hausa land, Egypt, and other African kingdoms. A university was founded in the city, as well as in the cities of Jenne and Segou, and Islam was spread through the markets and universities University, making Timbuktu a new era of Islamic scholarship. News of the Malian Empire's cities of wealth even traveled across the Mediterranean to southern Europe. The University of Sakore in Timbuktu was restored under Mansa Musa's reign of jurists, astronomers, and mathematicians. The university became a center of learning and culture, drawing Muslim scholars from around Africa and the Middle East to Timbuktu. In 1330, the kingdom of Mosi invaded and conquered the city of Timbuktu. Gao had already been captured by Mansa Musa's general, and Mansa Musa quickly regained Timbuktu, built a rampart and stone fort, and placed a standing army to protect the city from future invaders. By the end of Mansa Musa's reign, the Sakore University had been converted into a fully staffed university with the largest collection of books in Africa since the Library of Alexandria. The Sakore University was capable of housing 25,000 students and had one of the highest libraries in the world, with roughly 1 million manuscripts. The date of death of Mansa Musa is highly debated among modern historians and Arab scholars who recorded the history of Mali. According to an account by Ibn Khaldun, Mansa Musa was alive when the city of Tlemcen in Algeria was conquered in 1337, as he sent a representative to Algeria to congratulate the conquerors on their victory.